Hello everyone and welcome to Deckbuilding Derezzed. I'm your host, Code Marvelous, and today I'm joined by Ethan, who was the 4th place finisher at Gen Con, and also had a lot of competitive success this season with a very interesting deck. Why don't you say hi, Ethan?
Hi everyone, I'm Ethan. Just a little bit of background about me. I started playing Netrunner about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago or so, in New York with buddies, and just got really into the competitive game. So that's a bit about me. I currently live in DC, part of the DC meta.
Do you know Brett?
Brett? No, I don't think so.
Okay. But yeah, man, thank you very much for coming on. I really wanted to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Not just because you've obviously done very well this season, but also because you're playing a deck that I deeply, deeply enjoy. You're playing Nexus Kate.
Yeah.
Who says that 8-cost consoles are too expensive, right?
Yeah, no, it's such a fun deck. I love it. I'm just so attached to it. I'm going to keep playing it as long as it, wins games.
One could say that you're linked to it?
Yes. One could. 5 link.
One could say that. Well, it's worth noting that in addition to the ability of the deck, the core archetype that it's built around, which we'll talk about later, just Link is really good right now.
Yeah.
Like, I hear there's a lot of really good yellow cards that have the trace symbol on them.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the winner of the UK Nats had Rabbit Hole purely as a meta card, right? I mean, wasn't running Nexus at all, just had Rabbit Hole.
Right. And this is, again, one of those things where it's like, if you told me a year ago that somebody who won a Nationals would be like, I slotted Rabbit Hole as a silver bullet card, people would be like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
But here we are, and this is the exciting thing, because now we're at this point where people are playing like other yellow cards besides Fast Advance, so it actually makes Link matter.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question about like the success of the most wanted list, because on the one hand, it still kind of looks like a yellow meta versus an orange meta. But the decks are definitely different, and then there's more open space, especially on the runner side, I think, for all the factions to be competitive.
Right, and that was what I was going to comment on is yeah, we might be still seeing a lot of yellow, but at least other things are, like, viable now.
Yeah.
Because people aren't having to go super hard on Fast Advance to have a chance, and because of the MDL, and because the power of the Faust decks is reduced, other more interesting runner decks are viable in the hands of a skilled pilot.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so we're playing Kate. Kate is the ubiquitous shaper. She is the HB of runners.
Yes. No surprise, I played HB as well at Gen Con, so...
Seems good. It seems like classic Netrunner.
Yeah. There was 2 very fun decks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic. I love Kate just because she doesn't restrict your deck archetype, which is one of the reasons why I'm very excited for Smoke, even though she tends to lean more towards stealth. Her ability is ubiquitous. But let's talk about this deck, because this deck's really neat. Where do you want to start as far as components? Do you want to do hardware, events? What do you want to talk about first?
So I mean, ideally, if I'd been prepared, I would sort of break it down from the core strategy and building out from there. But I worry I would lose track of which cards we'd covered and which ones we hadn't. So let's start with hardware, because that's where the Nexus is.
Let's start with the card.
Yes, let's start with Security Nexus. I mean, obviously, this is a huge part of the deck. You really need to find it right away, and that's going to inform a lot of the deck choices going forward. For those who don't know or need a refresher, it gives you 1 memory, 1 link, and once per turn, you can force the corp to trace 5. And if successful, you give the runner a tag and end the run. And if unsuccessful, the runner bypasses the currently encountered ice. So it's basically a really flexible fem where you don't have to pay to do it once you get all your link online. So yeah, fantastic card, really fun card, the core of the deck.
Right. And one of the biggest things that people often say when they see this deck archetype for the first time, they're like, well, what if the corp boosts the trace? I'm like, they can vamp themselves to give me a single tag.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, tagging is more dangerous now, but during regional season, unless I was playing Gagarin, I wouldn't even bother clearing the tags, It was just okay, spend a lot of money to end the run, and then I'll just run it again. Because, you know, we still have breakers, and we still have really good breakers.
Right. But what I'm saying is, you know, you're not running last click anyway.
Oh,
so you're going to be able to... So if they're like, oh, I'll spend 14 since you only have 13 to keep you out, you're like, cool, 2 credits, clear the tag, end turn.
Yes.
Like...
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's a desperation play often by corps who just don't know what to do. Where they'll you know, dump a ton of credits to keep me out on a turn that doesn't decide the game. And as you suggested, they're vamping themselves, and basically from that point on, the game is totally in my hands.
Right. And now you won't get that play usually from experienced players, as you say, but a lot of times if people, there's a friend of mine who played a lot of Link, or Link Abhorrent Yellow, and when this deck first came out, actually 2 players, both of them were like, we have no idea what to do. Like, it was complete tilt mode because it's just like every single card in my deck is blank.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
So let's go up 1 slot, and let's go to the other thing that really makes this deck possible, and that's Rabbit Hole.
Yeah. So obviously Trace 5, if you're paying through, right, 3 credits to bypass, like, that's nice, but it's not great. You know, it's like a lot of ice isn't even going to cost more than 3 credits to break naturally, so it's a bit expensive for that. So we need Rabbit Hole to get us to 5 link. So once we got the Rabbit Holes and the Security Nexus down, we beat the Trace automatically. And obviously Rabbit Hole is going to be the best choice for getting your link down because, you know, it's a rabbit hole. Once you find one, you found them all.
Right. And that's worth noting because one of the biggest problems that this type of deck has in other factions is unless you also import Rabbit Hole, you have to depend on the order in which you randomly draw your link cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't turn the engine on as fast as you would if you're running the Rabbit Holes. So in Shaper, we don't have to spend the extra 3 influence for them.
Yeah, and just going on like the reason to pick Shaper, bit of a side note, I've seen some people play decks like Nexus Nasir, which is cool, and it's clever, and I definitely respect it, but I would just say that Kate is really obviously the best choice if you want to play this deck competitively.
Because she reduces the cost of this really expensive crap you're putting down?
Exactly, yeah. And like setup time is really important for this deck. And so I think it's more than just the value of the credits you're saving. You know, with Kate in general, it's going to be tempo. And it's about, you know, like maintaining speed and maintaining install time. And that extra credit just goes a long way in helping you do that.
Yeah, I remember Security Nexus when it came out. I remember being at Worlds in the pool at the Radisson talking with a friend of mine about Nexus Power Tap Nasir.
Yeah.
Which is like jank factor like to the 11th power.
Yeah.
But it was, when it worked, man, it was delicious.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got 3 RDIs. We're playing modded, so the modded, it gives you another really great modded target. And
yeah. And it's, you know,
R&D lock.
It's your win condition, right? Like you're winning either by locking the remote or locking R&D. R&D interface makes that profitable. So it's fairly self-explanatory.
We've got Plascrete instead of the more common Hopper these days. Talk to me a little bit about the choice of Plascrete over Hopper.
So Hopper is a card that does 3 things very mediocrely, right? It boosts Link, but it doesn't get you to 5, so you're still paying. And the difference between 5 and 6 is generally pretty negligible. It provides damage protection, but nowhere near as well as Plascrete. And it's not just the difference between 3 and 4. It's Hopper, you have to use it preemptively. Because if you don't use it in between clicks, they just kill you.
Right.
And so they can force you to use it when they only have 1 kill card in hand. And Plascrete, you can wait. So it's just way inferior. Yeah, so Plascrete's just, if you want damage protection, Plascrete is just way better. And then, like,
and it doesn't cost you any of your 1-ofs also. Yeah,
and paying 3 to draw 3 with Hopper just doesn't feel good. So, yeah, I cut it after getting killed by a Butcher Shop deck when I was running it.
That's fair. So we've got 2 clone chips. So talk to me a little bit about what some of the prime targets for a clone chip are in here.
So it's really going to depend on the matchup. Well, actually, not that much. You use it as clot against anything that's going to fast advance, and you use it to just find whatever breaker you need. You know, like you overdraw breakers, you tend to trash them because you don't install many breakers in this deck, and you often install them late.
Okay.
So trashing breakers is common. So you clone chip in whatever you need, or you clone chip the SMC to find the breaker. And then, you know, what breaker you need is just going to depend a lot on, you know, what the deck you're playing is.
Yeah, I mean, clone chip's just really good, and especially in Gate where you can get it for free.
Yeah,
so
yeah, definitely.
Where do you want to go from here?
Let's go through the breaker suite.
So we've got Ottoman. Pretty good.
Yeah. So Ottoman, I mean, most of this is pretty simple. Ottoman's just really flexible. Obviously, Ottoman 4 is amazing against HB. I've actually found Ottoman 2 to be really good against Rushy Wayland decks because it deals with Enigma and Spiderweb, which sort of frees up Lady recursion problems. Yeah, just really great, really flexible breaker. I used to run 2 of them. In an earlier meta when you didn't really need a Sentry Breaker, and it was great. Lady, I think Lady, with the maybe exception of Passport, or not Passport, Paperclip, excuse me, is like the best barrier breaker in the game. I love Lady, and I don't understand why people splash Corroder in Shaper, except for as like a huge space issue, card space. It's just so efficient.
It's really efficient.
Yeah, just a great card. And I only have 1, and I only have 2 clone chips and 1 scavenge in terms of recurring it. But it's really rare that comes up, honestly. Like the big barriers you have to deal with are going to be like Hive. Well, actually, it's a big problem with Hive, but you just set Atman 3 for Hive. Wraparound, where it's only 1. So it's whatever, and then Resistor, but you can ignore Resistor. So
because you just walk through it, you're like, sure, fire that 4 strength trace.
Exactly, yeah. So Cerberus Lady is just great for barriers. Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah,
it's really good. We have Cipher as the R&D decoder, for lack of a better way of putting it, I'd say.
Yeah, it usually goes on R&D. It sometimes goes on the remote. Sometimes it just goes to breaking an Enigma because that's looking like it's going to be the scoring remote, and I don't really feel like dealing with it or paying extra with Zool, you know, because like it does add up paying that extra 1 credit. And I'm a cheapskate. So yeah, but it usually goes on R&D. It's a great way to deal with Toll Booth, obviously, if there are 2 of them. Just great breaker. And then Zool is a nice backup for smaller code gates, and it's also really nice because it costs no MU, which people sometimes forget. It's got the cloud text, so it's free on MU. So in the rare case where you're really starved for memory, you can rely on Zool to break something like Toll Booth if you have to, but it doesn't feel good.
Right. So we also have a single Mimic because Architect is a card.
Pretty much because Architect is a card. I didn't run it for a while. So like it's kind of flexible, the Sentry Breaker. I had Mimic because I was expecting a lot of HB at Gen Con, which turned out to be fairly accurate. But I think I ran a different solution at each of the 3 regionals. So for my first regional, I didn't even run a killer. I just used that influence on the 3rd clone chip. And that was fine. I've also used Mongoose, which is terrible. Don't do it. I was seduced by how good the art is on Mongoose. But it's a terrible thing to splash in Shaper.
I was going to say, in Shaper, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And if you're a criminal with fat stacks of cash, it's great.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, for sure. No, I don't think it's a bad breaker. I think it's absolutely wrong for this deck. And then I ran Shrike, which is, I think, arguably the best choice. You know, it's really nice.
So expensive to get down.
Exactly. And it's expensive to break, right? You're paying 4 credits to break an Architect with it, which is terrible, you know, when you could be breaking it with Mimic for 2. but it doesn't cost MU, and it has added flexibility. So in like a sort of unpredictable meta where you think you might seek a Garen, I think Shrike is probably the best call. And in fact, I put it in my New York list.
Just to deal with Hot Tub Time Machine?
Yeah, pretty much just as Hot Tub Time Machine tech. And I was like, in other matchups, I'll just, bite the bullet and pay the cost. I won't feel good about it, but yeah.
Yeah, seems fair. So, other programs, we have the Clot we discussed before.
Yeah.
Fast Advance is still a thing.
Yeah, everyone knows how Clot works at this point. You clone chip it, you SMC it, you stop them from scoring. Pretty straightforward. Some people have talked about dropping it, actually. And I think that's definitely a mistake.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a mistake. I have several HB decks that says that getting rid of your Clot is a big mistake.
Yes. Yeah, Fast Advance is definitely still a thing in HB and in yellow.
Yeah.
Anyway, after that, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We have the 3 Magnum Opus. I mean, that's your econ package, right? It's slow and it's steady. So yeah, you want to get those down turn 1. That's like the most important thing is you get Magnum Opus down on your first turn or on the corp's second turn before your first turn begins.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth noting that in this current tag heavy all-seeing eye meta, like Magnum Opus is money that they cannot take away from you.
Yeah. A lot of econ engines these days seem to rely on resources. So something that you hold on to is at exactly what you said. It's great.
Fantastic. And we got Self-Modifying Code, because I hear that's a really good card with a really good piece of artwork on it.
Yes, beautiful art. I have nothing to contribute about SMC. It's amazing. Yeah. Run them.
Yeah. So do you want to do resources or events next?
Let's go through resources.
So we got one of my favorites. We've got Artist Colony.
Yes. Artist Colony and Fansite. Oh, how I love you. So for the longest time, this deck ran Trade-In. And that was how you tutored for Security Nexus. And that's another thing that I've seen a lot of these decks do is not run away to tutor Security Nexus, which...
it's bad for you.
It is. It's very bad for you. If you're playing in a long tournament with a lot of rounds, you're just asking to get salty because you didn't find the cards you wanted. But anyway, Trade-In sucks. Trade-In's terrible. It's an awful card. Right? You have to spend clicks to install hardware that you want to use, and then you have to trash it. And then you have to install the next thing. It's just costly in clicks, and wasting cards and opportunity cost. It just never feels good. But Artist Colony feels great. And Fansite doesn't even cost you real agendas if you got a Fansite scored, and you can install your Nexus mid-run. I mean, there's all sorts of cute shenanigans you can do. So yeah, great card.
Yep. And Fansite, which is, what we're sacking to that. I've done this in previous videos. Viewers at home, you can watch the Pitchfork deck, which kind of like launched this idea into the consciousness of the meta. But it's basically, it creates a 0-point agenda that you can then pop at instant speed to find whatever you need at that time, like a rogue piece of hardware. Honestly, if I get good draws, a lot of times what I'll use the Artist Colonies for is if they're like, well, you got Security Nexus, so I'm just not going to res anything. I'm like, cool, I'll install 2 RDIs at the end of the run because you didn't res anything, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so many fun plays you can do with Artist Colony Fansite. So yeah, great package.
We've got 2 daily casts in this list. In the comments of this list, though, you mentioned that you were going to likely replace it for probably 1 Beth and 1 Parisia. Do you still stand by that change?
Yeah, I think I definitely the Beth. 1 Beth, I think, is... Beth is just amazing, right?
She's pretty good. And we can tutor for her.
Yeah, exactly. And we can tutor for her with Artist Colony. So I've honestly considered 2 Bath just to see her early and not tax the Artist Colony, but I think it's just hard to justify when the second one's a totally dead draw, and the strategy doesn't rely on her.
Right.
So yeah, 1 daily cast goes for Beth. The second one, I think Parisia is the best choice, but I've talked to people variously about Deus Ex, Feedback Filter, and a third Fansite. And I think Parisi or Feedback Filter is the right choice.
Yeah, Feedback Filter would probably be pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got 2 Earthrise. Accelerating our draws is good.
Yep.
And clickless draws, because as you said, our clicks should be going to Magnum Opus. We don't want to be spending a lot of clicks on random stuff.
Yeah, and so there's 2 Earthrise and 1 Quality Time, and it's for that reason exactly. Is early game, when we're setting up, we want to be doing this clickless. We want to be making money on our turns, and Quality Time kind of slows that down.
You're right. So we've also got the single political operative, because I hear that there's this card. I think they call it a Caprice Nice.
That's the one.
That's really bad for you if you're bad at rock, paper, scissors.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah. Political operative is there for Caprice. At Gen Con, I didn't use it once the entire tournament. Never installed it.
But when you don't have it, if you didn't put it in...
But if I didn't have it in, then every single game would have been against Polana, and it would have been a disaster.
Right, that's how it works.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't cut it, obviously. It's just great.
It's also really good for killing Sandberg while running.
Yes, that is very true. It's great for Sandberg, and you can get the kind of, janky, like, kill Jackson kind of plays, right? Where you, like, run HQ.
Where they just get done overdrawing.
Yeah.
And you're just like, yeah, get rid of it.
Yeah, you run HQ and then install Plop, kill Jackson, and then just steal those agendas. And that always feels kind of good. Feels terrible for the other side, I think. But,
But them's the breaks.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, unless it's like a Siphon Shaper or something weird, like if Shaper runs HQ and you have agendas in archives that you don't want them to have, just use Jackson before they access. Just use Jackson.
Yeah. And we also have a single SACCon in here.
Yeah. So it used to be 2 SACCon. Before the new Most Wanted List update, the deck was teched pretty heavily to beat yellow. And I think 1 is fine now. You still want it because, CBS is still a card, and you wanna protect Clot. And it slows down CI a bit, which is nice. And then occasionally you use it just to, like, protect a breaker or something, Like, sometimes you run into Shattered Remains, and you gotta protect Nexus.
Well, what I was going to say is in the testing that I've done with your deck, I've used SACCon to beat Batty.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I'm going to Batty away your lady. I'm like, no, you're not. Because I'm going to just go ahead and keep that.
Yeah.
Like...
Exactly, yeah. Unless I know my opponent's deck entirely and I know that it won't matter, I install SACCon. It's 1 click, it's free, it might come up. And if it comes up, you'll be glad you have it.
Absolutely. So as far as events, we have 3 diesels. It's pretty good.
Yep.
Costs no money, which is super important early on.
Yep, gets you the cards you want fast.
We got 3 modded, one of my all-time favorite cards. And look, the main target for modded is on the modded art.
Yes,
look at that.
It sure is. It sure is. Modded Magnum Opus Click 1 is the feel goods. You spent 1 credit and you are set on money for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it feels really good.
Yeah.
We have got 1 quality time. You already kind of went over this. It's really good. It helps you if you've got like a breathe turn to just dig and get a bunch of stuff that you want to set up with.
Yeah, or on the do or die turn, right? If you like just have to see Artist Colony this turn or you lose the game, or you have to see Clot or whatever.
Right.
Quality time is the fastest way to find it. But you don't really want to use it early in the game, generally.
Right, because you're going to spend an entire turn installing.
Yeah.
It's a huge tempo hit.
Yep.
We got a single scavenge, so this has multi-use in this deck.
Yeah, so 80 to 90% of the time, it's for Lady. I almost never reset Cyber Cipher. And then actually, occasionally I've used it to get back a Clot. If clone chips have been taxed out, like trash a zoo to get Clot or something like that.
Seems good.
Yeah, so it has uses outside of Lady, but the vast majority of the time it's for Lady.
Okay, we got Sure Gambles for the same reasons we've always got Sure Gambles.
Yep, it's good money. It's good money.
And we've got Vamp.
Vamp is a pet card for me. I love Vamp. It's so much fun. Yeah, it's fantastic. I was expecting, like I said, Gen Con to be mostly HB and maybe some Polana, and Vamp does a lot of work against them. You can't play a Caprice side game when you're broke.
Right. It's also a hard reset if they don't have res dice.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's stopping them from resing ice is huge. Because HB can build very taxing servers, right? And even if you're only paying 2 credits to break each piece of ice, if they've got 4 or 5 ice on that remote that they installed while you were dirtling and setting up your security nexus, you're still spending 8 or 10 credits. So if you can get them broke so they can't res it, now it's free. Yeah, so landing a Vamp often just ends the game.
Yeah. And that's been my experience as well, because this is actually the deck that I have sleeved up for my own personal play right now.
Oh, glad to hear it.
Yeah, if I can get an 8, the more expensive my console is, the happier I am about a deck. Like, if somebody actually ever makes Monolith work, I'm going to be a very happy camper.
Excellent. I love it.
But Vamp is just such a great card. Like, every single time I've actually landed Vamp in a game, it's just game ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's crazy how much work it does. But yeah, that's the deck. It's actually surprisingly straightforward as far as like the cards that are in it. It's kind of intuitive that way.
Yeah.
But I think the piloting is where a lot of the nuances are. So in that vein, me and Ethan are going to take this deck onto Jinteki, and we're going to see how we do. Ethan, thank you very much for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And everybody watching at home, until we see you again, always be running.